Hello, I'm Alex.
I'm James.
And I'm Dan.
And welcome to episode 41 of the RAGAMUFFIN Music Podcast. It's a place for us to talk about the music we love.
On this episode, we'll be reviewing brand new albums from Not Loose, Like Moss to Flames and Bring Me the Horizon, as well as some singles.
And later on, we'll be trying to predict slam dunk headliners for next year.
But first, last episode's album recommendations. Who wants to go first?
I will.
All right, go.
Will ya?
So I recommended The Royal Dreamcatchers. It was kind of a bit of a nostalgia one for us, Alex, growing up on it. So how was it just kind of revisiting?
Bloody brilliant. I think the thing that stood out to me the most as I listened through this was it made me realise what it is about modern metalcore that I don't like that much. And it's that this band and this album, granted it is kind of old by about 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
What I liked about it is that the guitarists are all over like every inch of the guitar. Like, whereas you listen to a lot of modern metalcore now and it's bottom string tuned to drop A, and it's like just chug the first 4 frets and hope something happens. Which I think is, and as I was listening to it, it was like an epiphany. It was like, oh, this is fucking sick because there's like sweep picking and dual solos and like crazy leads and stuff. And I just found it really like engaging to listen to compared to like most modern metalcore albums that I've listened to in the last like 3 to 5 years, I guess. So yeah, that was really fun for me. And I guess if you like a style of metalcore that's like that, it's very sort of reminiscent of like Killswitch Engage, August Burns Red, bands of that era, and that's that kind of corner of metalcore, then I think you'll really like this album. Gearing up for a return, or teasing a return, I think. So
Yes.
I'm very excited about that.
Same. Dan.
You see, I'm on record as well as like recently saying I'm going through a bit of metalcore fatigue at the moment. Like it's not really doing a lot for me, and I think that made it maybe a bad time for me to go and check out this album. But listening to Alex talk there has kind of put things into perspective for me that this album sounds a lot like what metalcore bands are doing right now, which although right now feels a bit samey and a little bit repetitive, for them to have been doing this 10 years ago, I think that suggests to me that it's a good album and was maybe before its time.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I'm going to give it another listen and
Nice.
see if I can enjoy it a bit more. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it. Again, it's just there's so much that sounds similar to it that it's very difficult to sort of differentiate anything. But I'm going to give it another go with that new outlook on life in mind, and I'll see if I like it a bit more.
I think looking back at this and then their follow-up 7, there's definitely things on there where it feels like they were ahead of the curve ever so slightly. And yeah, got me excited about new shit coming soon, hopefully, as well. So we'll be listening out for that.
Speaking of bands that are ahead of the curve, what did you recommend, Alex?
I recommended The Black is Beautiful by Let Live in anticipation of their, I guess, reunion that's going to be coming sometime next year. I adore this album and everything that it stands for lyrically and sonically, and I know that you like it as well, Dan, but what was it like to revisit it?
Well, again, like I mentioned in my little segue there, revisiting it has made me realise just how ahead of their time this band was. Like the first couple of songs in, I'm immediately thinking of modern day bands like Static Dress, just from the like energy and the sort of erraticness. Like it's their songs on record, but it feels like you're listening to a performance. Which again, I guess the influence and how ahead of their time this band was is just clear through that comparison straight away. And from front to back, like every song on this album could be a single and has something different and unique and special about it. There's a lot of love put into this album, and it's evident.
I'd be content if the reunion next year and the shows are just this in full. I like their back catalogue, but that is how much I think this album stands up as just a whole body of work that I think it would translate really well because it does go through a lot of different sort of energies and moments that I think live it wouldn't be very energetic, but it wouldn't be like draining.
And also, unfortunately, like with a lot of politically charged music that we revisit, in this recommendation section, a lot of the songs are sadly still relevant today. So I think that energy will still be required, I guess, is the phrase I'm looking for.
So interestingly, I come from a different perspective from you two because I never really listened to them much beforehand. So I kind of like hearing your nostalgia is kind of quite sweet in a way. And there's a lot of points there still that even from the new perspective, I agree with you so much on, Dan, including like the relevancy nowadays, the way comments are being made throughout the lyrics where it still can be applied right now and make sense, especially in very kind of strong politically charged climates that we're in. And you can tell that it's meant with a lot of intention, care and love and passion with that, which was absolutely fascinating. It was nice to kind of come into this almost new in a way, knowing beforehand from when it was recommended, of you two talking about it in such kind of revere that you loved it. You're looking forward to this kind of reunion as it seems. And I think listening to it, it feels like I mean, who knows what happens afterwards, but it feels like they would have still a very strong place in the music scene today and a lot of love and demand for them with that. One of my main takeaways actually was throughout listening to it, the mix, it felt like I was in the room while they were recording it. It felt like I'm there standing in the middle and they're surrounded around me in a circle and I'm kind of feeling it and I'm right there in the moment. And I can't really think of a lot of other recordings where I've genuinely just like instantly felt that. And it makes it stand out as something very special. And it's something that it feels like is going to reach out to people and speak to them in many different ways with it. And yeah, very, very enjoyable and very different from many listening experiences I've ever had.
It's hard for me to try and picture what sort of size festival or like where you'd place them on a festival. But my instinct says Cave headliner at Trees.
Yeah, I think that's about right. It's difficult mainly because of the kind of pent-up demand, because they've been away for a while. I know like Fever 333 have been knocking around, but it's not quite the same. And the confirmation that this is the final go as well. Like the demand to see them would be there, so you've kind of got to take how big they were before they split up and then kind of elevate it that little bit more just because of the demand. So yeah, I think Cave at Trees would be pretty good. Just depends whether the download come swooping in for them or not first.
Where at download, you reckon? Avalanche? Headline?
Maybe. I don't know about headliner. That's why someone like Trees or Outbreak perhaps would be like more...
Feels more like realm.
More appealing to them.
I think this would be probably too small for them, but something like Burn It Down as a headliner.
Definitely.
Trying to imagine... Think about like the energy for like being as an ocean and...
You know, that was my first thought, because Burn It Down were teasing, potentially announcing the headliner that they hadn't announced yet. And then Let Live put this little announcement out. I was like, oh, okay. And then I saw that it's next year they're planning to come back. And I thought, wow, okay. So maybe next year. Again, they're going to be in demand, so really depends what they're motivated by. I mean, if they're motivated by making some money off of it, then it'll be one of the Live Nation festivals. If they're motivated by just having a good time and seeing as many people as possible, then they'll probably do Trees, Slam Dunk, Outbreak, a couple of those.
Again, you talk about like playing certain albums in full potentially. That's a big one that Slam Dunk have kind of become known for, that kind of special anniversary sets of some kind. So it would fit in very strongly there.
Interesting. And Dan, your recommendation?
I've decided to drop you both into the miserable yet wonderful world of Aaron West and the Roaring Twenties, and I'm very intrigued to hear what you both think of it.
Well, I already knew Our Apartment and I've forgotten the name of it. Divorce in the American South.
Yeah,
I already knew those songs before this album, and I adore them both quite a lot. So I think I was kind of interested to see. I mean, I guess the lyrics in Divorce kind of, I don't want to say spoil, but they can't. It's like that's what
it's a clue.
There's a big clue about what the album and the themes are going to be. But I think what was interesting for me was going through the whole process, and I think it was it was just super interesting. Like the entire way through, I kept sort of guessing to myself, like, okay, how much of this is purely fictional? How much of this is like fragments from Soupy's real life that he's chucked in and he's been able to draw from, and like where that line blurs, I think is kind of really interesting, because I guess there's no real. I guess you don't really know, do you? There's not really ever going to be an answer. to
No,
that.
I mean, the motive for starting this project was just to develop Soupy's songwriting.
Right.
Like, he didn't know how to play guitar before he started this.
Wow.
And he was like, I'm going to learn how to play guitar. I'm going to sort of develop some songwriting. That's why I guess this character Aaron seems to have this such a miserable life. Is that Dan's basically invented this character and gone, I'm going to make everything that could possibly go wrong.
Yeah, this guy sucks. His life sucks. But I really enjoyed it, and I think it was a really interesting blend of like. Obviously, I guess at its heart, it's sort of like folk, acoustic singer-songwriter stuff, but it still felt like it was a real blend of a lot of different like songwriting and stylistic ideas going on. And I think I'm just kind of curious to see where like. I was about to say in canon. What's the fucking word I'm looking for?
I don't know. I feel like
Like conceptually, like where it goes story wise, like
Yeah.
into the next album, because it seems like it can't really get much worse, but also it kind of could get a lot better. I don't know. I'm sure it's probably going to get worse.
That's what I like though. Like that's kind of almost like the TV show element of it. Like it's like you finish season 1, it's finished at like this point, and you're like, well, where does it go next? What happens in the next season?
I feel like this is going to sound so silly, but to make the TV show comparison, I feel like I kind of want maybe some more characters. If that makes, or like more of the rest of the world fleshed out, because it's a lot of him and his wife, obviously, which is like the focus of the whole thing. But I guess there's mentions to like his wife's sister and stuff, especially on
Well, his mum makes a brief appearance as well.
So
kind
I
of
guess
gives some backstory on his dad.
Yeah, I guess fleshing those people out a bit more is what I'd like, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I like that. I like that you're like ready for the next one already. So let's hear your thoughts, James. Again, not your kind of music.
No, definitely not kind of my wheelhouse.
I'm very intrigued
I like
as to how you'll approach this from like a songwriting perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that is the approach I really kind of went into it with, and throughout listening to the album, it was very much listening to how it was written. Honestly, I didn't end up finding myself listening to the lyrical content that much, to be honest. It really kind of came from that songwriting perspective and just kind of hearing how transition happened for it, because you kind of mentioned that to me anyway beforehand, so I think that was kind of stuck in my mind, and like I can tell immediately it's very beautifully written. And like some of the transitions between it and how different songs kind of differ from each other. The one thing I found hard about it, and it's also kind of the crux of it in a way, is that it is so acoustically driven that after a while it felt to me a little bit, I think stale's too strong a word, but it felt a lot monotonous maybe with some of it. But yet within that, there were still kind of parts that would happen where there could be little lead guitar licks that would kind of try and draw you back in. It feels like there's a constant reel to pull you back in as a listener, and different ways that happens throughout it. That's really kind of quite fascinating. I loved, in particular, my main one was actually Saint Joe Keeps Us Safe. And that then kind of popped out because immediately from hearing one kind of fairly similar-ish sound from the first two, we start then looking into like 6/8. We're starting to kind of change the tone of the sound and what's coming across, and that was where it kind of really appealed to me from that perspective with it. I don't think I've ever been one anyway that's really listened to a concept album and just bought in on the concept and really kind of understood it. I think I've just found it a bit of a struggle. Like I can go back to like Scenes from a Memory Part 2 by Dream Theater. I could go back to The House of Golden Bones Part 1, Part 2. I still don't fully understand the story.
I've not got a clue what's
and so I
going on
think
there.
there's a part when it comes to concept albums where I have maybe a bit more of a standoffish approach with it slightly. And so that's kind of going to keep me intrigued over the next 2 months in seeing how it's going to develop. I'm going to spend more time with this, and I want to sit down and literally go song by song and just sit and read lyrics.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. You said you didn't pay too much attention to the lyrics. Does that mean you didn't really manage to follow the story?
No, it didn't. It didn't really kind of resonate with me, and I think that it didn't. Maybe tonally with the voice, it wasn't something I usually listen to, and so it didn't kind of appeal in that kind of way. And then that's why I think I felt I went so much more music central in how I approached this and kind of took it in when listening to it. So it's kind of something I want to do and follow along and try, I guess, possibly for the first time to actually follow not just a concept album, but stuff like where there are dual concept albums I've tried to follow before. I think the only thing I can kind of refer to as something where it's been the closest in terms of following a concept was probably A Tear in the Fabric of Life.
Sure.
And so then to try and get my head around this a bit more is something I have intention to do, and to kind of sit down over these next couple of months and really take it in. Like, I've got the idea in my head of when it comes down to having a few listens to the next album, I kind of also then want to immediately go back to the first album to try and wrap this all up in one and kind of have that progress going through. So yeah, an ongoing story that we will continue to visit each podcast.
I mean, the lyrics are like a main. Again, musically, it's very like artistically written and very well done as well. But lyrically is like one of my favourite points of the project, of how you can literally follow where Aaron's going. You can follow his journey. Like, you know, he's starting in a apartment in Brooklyn. He's heading south, and like one of the main points here is like there's enough details, but some of them being subtle enough for you to sort of look into them or think about them a bit. Like the Thunderbird Inn, there's a lyric, I've been staying in a motel off the 95. The 95 is the main highway going south from sort of New York, Carolina area. And there is literally a motel off the 95 called the Thunderbird Inn. So like, he's done the research to be able to like literally build this character story and like the journey where he's going. And a recurring theme across all three albums actually as well is the mention of seasons and the weather, which I feel like really helps you kind of pinpoint sort of the timeline.
Oh yeah, seeing how it all follows.
Because obviously in St. Joe Keeps Us Safe, he's talking about dead leaves on the concrete. So you're obviously thinking, oh, it's sort of autumn time, towards the end of the year kind of thing. And then I can't remember if it's Running Scared. He's like cursing the dashboard heat and how cold it is, sleeping in the car. So obviously at that point, you know, he's like on the road and it's winter at this point. So yeah, there's loads of like subtle details and descriptions that sort of help drive the story along without sort of, yes, there's bits where he's blatantly saying, I'm at a truck stop in this location. But also there's other subtle points where he's mentioning leaves or the weather or things as well, which just
towards that time of year.
Point you to where he, like location and sort of time of year as well.
That's where I've got to get past this fight of not really enjoying concept albums and to try and get a grip a bit more with it. So
I think if you revisit the album with the lyrics in front of you, I think that'll be helpful for you.
Should we move on to some new music?
Yeah.
Yes.
First up, we've got a new single from Speed from their upcoming full-length album, Only One Mode, and the song is Real Life Love. This one's for the homies. What do you think about this one?
I love it. For someone like kind of coming to Speed newer, pretty much of your recommendation, this has been a fun one to listen to in the gym in particular. Like, gets you absolutely pumped, hyped. I can't help but listen to it and imagine the live show. I think it's something so ingrained. I think with a lot of hardcore music anyway, you kind of just picture how it would be, no barrier, pits, all this kind of shit, and it feels immediately like a song that's gonna absolutely pop off live. I think like structurally, kind of the intro where it leads into it before it really kicks in is strong. Kind of gets that anticipation going for it, and then just absolutely slaps. I absolutely love it. I love the tone of the vocals in particular, to be honest, and kind of been trying to listen to them a bit more and more, especially leading into Download, because we're very excited to try and see them. Yeah, big fan of this.
I think it's a very cool song. It's got a minute-long intro, which for a 3-minute song seems a bit much, but I think it's totally justified. Like, it really just leads into the rest of the song very well. And for that, I think 3 minutes and 2 seconds it is in total, it's just totally erratic. It never stays in one place. It keeps you on your toes for that whole time. And I just think it's really cool.
Yeah, just a badass song. Like, that's kind of all I want from Speed, is just stuff that sounds fucking hard and really cool, and it's going to sound good live, and ticks all my boxes. I love it.
Next up, we've got Harriet with Siege Lord.
Now, this might be my favourite Harriet song.
Oh, I thought you were going to go the other way then.
Oh, yeah, so did I.
And so from a band that you two have kind of like loved for a while, and I've not necessarily found my right entry point, I think, so far, this may be it. And now, so I'm not 100% in from my side. Let's just clarify there. But this has been one where kind of coming back to and listening to all the reviews, I've been really, really interested to keep looking back to. And I think this is the one where it feels to me in particular, everything has kind of come together in the right way. I think production, the songwriting, various kind of riffs throughout. It felt like this to me was where it clicked. And so it's kind of got me very much interested in what's still to come now. It's got to a point where, based just purely off of this, I'm now more intrigued to see what's going to happen. I wasn't really sold with everything beforehand. Profound Morality didn't really appeal to me straight away, or kind of be something where I'm like, yeah, I want to go back and listen to it, whereas it could be with many other people. But this was the first time listening to Harriet where I was like, okay, this ain't bad.
Is he leading on from what James has said there? I've got my notes here. Not my fave, but possibly their most accessible. Which I think it is. I think a lot of their music is deliberately quite offensive and difficult to listen to and noisy, which I love. It's great. But I think for an outsider, it can be maybe difficult to get into. But this one is probably like the clearest kind of chorus they've got in a song of theirs. Structurally, as well, as James said, it seems like it almost not holds your hand, because that's not what I've got in my notes. I've got in my notes that I think my favourite part of this song is the way that the bass carries us through to the chorus, like we're a sacrifice being on a procession through a town to their doom.
I think that's spot on.
Yeah, say that, and I'm just immediately thinking of Life of Brian with the crosses.
Whereas with a lot of their other music, which I love, of course, is a bit like erratic and kind of all over the place from like a deliberate artistic perspective. But this one seems like the simplest song structure of theirs they've gone for. So I think maybe the most accessible. And if James is saying this is his entry point,
yeah, I think
the first one he's listened to where he's kind of been pulled in and
probably
gets it, then
why it helps me a lot, because
accurate.
Like thinking back to like other bands that are just so chaotic and erratic, like you say, like I could never get into a band like Dillinger Escape Plan. For me, it was just too much, where it was all over the place. I couldn't feel like there's structure. I feel like some of that is needed for my personal preference in order to get into that. And I think having this kind of structure, it gives that more of that appeal. It makes me kind of be more involved. I get that people write songs in 1,000,001 different fucking ways, and it's going to appeal to everyone differently, and people are going to get something different from everything. But I think with that, that structure really kind of kept me key and kind of kept me listening for focal points in the song, which I know are going to repeat. There's the part of the reason why it's called a hook. It's a hook to kind of keep you in and draw you back into the song. And I think people that write successful hooks are the ones that you hear out and about constantly. People are singing that become the most popular. And so I think this could be a potential one where it may be appealing more to the masses and is going to help Harriet. Not to say they're going to sell out or anything, but you look at a band like Not Loose, who constantly push new boundaries.
It'll help them reach more people.
This is where it's going to be that more people are going to hear about Harriet and then discover their catalogue, and whether they like or don't at that point is then up to them on what they feel with the music. But this could be where it pushes Harriet to that next level.
I feel like with a lot of what I've heard of Harriet before, it's very much driven by like the atmosphere and the world building, and like I feel like, especially like Profound Morality, I feel like that exists to serve the on-record experience first and like the live experience second, which is not a bad thing. It's just I feel like that's the way that they intend for it to be consumed, is like proper good headphones, shrouded in the dark sort of thing. And then because they've spent so much of like the last year and a half touring and playing with like so many different bands on so many different festivals, I feel like that, even if it's subconscious, has informed how this song has been constructed. Because this, I think accessible is kind of the right word, at least by like Harriet's definition of it, because it's the one that is the like, as I could hear it, I was like, oh, this is going to be really sick live. Like there's a real sense of like a hook in this one.
So I guess what you're saying is by playing the songs live and seeing the response from the crowd, they can kind of gauge what people are like more responsive to.
I guess so, because I don't know, but I've got a feeling Profound Morality was like a COVID era project, maybe.
I think so, yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I think it is going to be like the entry point for a lot of people, and probably the highlight of their set going forward. I like it.
Right, we've got a new one from Vended, which is Nihilism.
I feel like we keep taking 2 steps forwards and 3 steps back with this band.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to get out of the shadow of your parents or not? Do you know what I mean? Like, I understand that their upbringing and who they are is going to massively inform the style of music that they make. But, you know, there are 100 bands out there that grew up listening to Slipknot that have written music that doesn't sound exactly like Slipknot. And I think that's their biggest curse, is like everything they do sounds really cool, but I heard it on Iowa and on Self-Titled already.
And done a lot better.
And
Hell of a lot better.
And in a way, that's a compliment.
it's a compliment.
But
Yeah,
at the same time,
you're getting up there with some of the best albums of all time, but it's already been done.
Yeah.
Agree. And the annoying part is, I feel like throughout music we listen to by then, there's like snippets of what could be, and there's potential there of it. And I think that's the frustrating part, is that you kind of know that yes, there's always going to be a comparison, and you go into it. If you're in that band, you know you're always going to be compared to your dad's. You're going to be compared to not, like, it's just what it is now. But there's being able to step out of that shadow and be independent from that. And I feel it's not 100% happening. Where they want to try and say different, as they probably would do, because they want to do it in their own right. But it does feel like, as new metal is kind of having the revival it has been recently, and you're getting like nuclear bands, you get like Tally, you get Graphic Nature, where there are takes on new metal influences from that, but being done in a whole new, different, exciting, innovative way, that Vended aren't doing that yet. But I still think they could, and I still hold out some hope that it's there, because from live performances, they sound and look fantastic live. I just want that music to connect.
Yeah.
I think the frustrating thing is, I can't remember which song it was, but I think 2 or 3 singles ago, they released a song that sounded really fresh, really different, and like a step away from kind of the Slipknot-y sound that they were always stuck with, seemingly. And then this seems like again a step back into that shadow. Next up is Slick by Cartoon Head, and I think slick is a very good word to describe Cartoon Head's sound.
Yes.
I feel like it's kind of emo/pop with very clean sounding guitars and slick vocals.
Yeah, and this one feels like sometimes I feel like sometimes you get a band and you can kind of sense when they've put something out that's like quite intentionally like pushing their own boundaries, I guess, and like opening up the lines for them to play within. And I feel like this is what this is not really like anything that we've heard on the EP, or it's not like anything we've heard them do so far, but at the same time it's not like completely left field that it's like a surprise. It's sort of like, well, it's a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Star Wars reference. James has glazed over.
Which episode? I think is it episode 2?
2. Terrible.
I can't remember which scene though.
That'll bug me for a while. I'm gonna have to Google it in a minute. But I really like the song, and yeah, I think it's sort of carried by the there's sort of like and I mean this complimentary, but there's sort of like a lazy, like dragged, droning style to his vocals, that it's almost like, oh god, the last thing I want to do is sing, but I have to, because I can't like get this out any other way. That's sort of how it comes across to me,
I
especially
know
on
what you
this
mean.
song. And that sort of like,
But then at the end of this song, he's kind of belting it a bit more.
yeah, it's like that. It's like reluctant to start with, and then he like eases into it, I guess.
Yeah.
But oh yeah, I thought it was a really cool song, and they've just teased today, time of recording, that another one is coming out very soon.
June 5th.
Very excited. I think if you were a fan of Coast to Coast, R.I.P., and you
Send
haven't started listening to this band, you should.
I think if you're a fan of music in general, you should listen to this because it's good music.
Right then, first of the albums.
Right then.
Big one that everyone has been excited for a while. Before it was even out, everyone was saying this could be album of the year. You Won't Go Before You're Supposed To by Not Loose. Now, we had many, many singles leading up to it that just kept pushing the boundaries and kind of reaffirming that Not Loose weren't going to just go mainstream or cater to the massive surge in popularity. And I think I'm very, very happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I've already mentioned briefly before we started recording, whatever we say about this album now, it's kind of redundant. Like, first it's been out for a couple, 2 or 3 weeks now, so everyone's kind of formed their opinion on it, everyone's heard it. But I think everyone probably formed an opinion before the album came out.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the singles were enough to know that this was going to be an album of the year contender. And also, it's just Knock Loose doing what Knock Loose do. It's noisy, it's heavy, the songs are all very well crafted, it's disturbing in places. My favourite disturbing part, my disturbing highlights of the album is that creepy bit of guitar in Take Me Home. I can't remember the exact melody of it, but yeah, and it kind of bleeds over from the song before it as well.
As you said that, I just had it in my head. Do you remember Harry Hill's TV burp of TV highlight of the week?
Disturbing song of the month. Yeah, I love it a lot. I am always a big fan of when, again, I prefer the album format to singles. And although Knocked Loose released a whole bunch of singles before the album came out, on the album, a lot of the songs kind of bleed into each other, which I'm always a big fan of. Mm-hmm. Piece by Piece, Suffocate, Don't Reach For Me, Moss Covers All, and Take Me Home all connect. So that's basically half the album there.
Such a nice run.
That just all run into each other. And then you've got a couple of songs on the B side in the second half of the album that do the same thing. It's just very, very satisfying. And when you kind of rely on the atmosphere and the world building like Knocked Loose do, it's a great way to kind of piece it all together, I think.
I'm going to say 5 beautiful words. 10 songs, 27 minutes. Oh! And we're going to talk about album length for something else a bit later on, but it just feels like for less than half an hour, you are being sucked into this world against your will, and you have to just endure it, live it, and try and survive, because it just wants to have so much aggression, energy, so much in your face, with kind of vulgar disgust in a way that you kind of get known for with some of the Not Loose sounds. And it's just so fun. There's so many parts throughout it where musically it just kind of oh shit, that sounds cool. And I think a lot of it, to be honest, I think is driven amazingly well by the drums. I think Pak-Sun has phenomenal kind of talent displayed across this record that really is, for me, to be honest, maybe from the drum perspective, is becoming a massive driving force in why I think Knock Loose are so great. Yes, you'll have great dissonance that we hear across records, great riffs. You've got Brian's very distinct vocal style, but I think Pak-Sun's drums are really just pulling everything together so tightly and are what is really helping to elevate this band right now. Songs are incredible. Yeah, I fucking love it.
The calm that keeps you awake. I want to give a shout out to that little percussion that sounds like a ray gun that goes do-do-do-do-do.
Beautiful shit.
I think, the atmosphere and the sort of just horrible vibe is brilliant on this album. My only critique is I feel like Slaughterhouse 2 just felt to me, just a tad forced. Both within like the vibe of the album, it didn't really. To me, it felt like an outlier, and I feel like I don't think the coolness of the idea justifies its existence to me, personally.
I can see where you come from with it. I think,
Like to me, it's like, oh, that's a cool idea. We should do that.
I
And
get
then
you.
you
I think the song on its own is
it's
great.
good. Yeah.
But yeah, it does kind of interrupt the flow of the album a little, I guess.
I've seen some weird complaints about people being like, "Oh, there's too much of the same lyrics." But it's like, if you're gonna have a part 1 and a part 2 of
Yeah,
songs,
exactly.
you're gonna have so many running themes for it. It's the point when you're gonna have sequels and things, when you're gonna have that kind of theme, that kind of discussion, that topic, those kind of similar vocalists. You've got people collabing together. You're gonna have those themes run throughout. So I don't really understand that approach people have had with it. But yeah, I kind of do see your point in terms of where it is and lies in the overall landscape of this album.
I also feel like I have the opposite of recency bias because I still think at the moment Tearing the Fabric of Life is better. And that's
I
21
agree.
minutes,
I
and this
agree.
is only 27.
Don't think
Not
I'd-
far off.
I don't think I disagree with you.
I think Tearing the Fabric of Life is a better body of work, but because it's an EP, quote unquote, and not a full album, it won't maybe get the recognition to the same
You see,
degree.
I actually disagree a little bit.
Personal preference, I also prefer
Different shade of blue.
Different Shade of Blue. That's what I was going to say.
Mm.
But I don't know if that's down to there just being so many like individual bangers on that. Because I think comparing it to this album as a cohesive piece of work, like flows together very well. So I do think that the longer, like the more I expose myself, the more I listen to this album. That's me exposing myself to the album, not listening to the album naked.
Thanks for the clarification.
The more I listen to this album, I think maybe it will overtake A Different Shade of Blue. But we'll see.
I think I agree with you.
It won't overtake A Tear in the Fabric of Life, though. I do think that's their strongest work.
I agree with both you. I think Tearing the Fabric of Life is the best piece of work they've done. And I think that's not a slight on this in any way, because I think deservedly so, despite all the hype and everything, this will be an album of the year discussions. And we will be talking about it, I think, when we come to our awards at the end of the year. Whether it wins or not, you have to stay tuned.
Well, that is the question I was going to end this review on, is, as it stands right now, is this album of the year?
Personally? No.
Personally? No.
Personally? No.
Dun,
And I
dun,
think we leave it there and we don't say anything else.
I know what yours is.
Next up, we've got Light Moths to Flames with The Cycles of Trying to Cope.
You see, as I mentioned when we were talking about The Royal earlier, the band, not the TV show, I'm struggling with metalcore a bit at the moment, and that was continuing on this album. Although I think Angels Weep is a strong opener, it feels like something I've heard before. But then I got to Over the Garden Wall, which brought me back in a bit. It's got a very fun riff in there, some interesting drumming with all the ghost notes and the sort of inclusion of the splashes and things. I thought that was a really good song. Gone Without a Trace is kind of similar, but with a bit more ambience and a hookier chorus, so I thought that was great as well. But then the final third of the album kind of dragged a bit for me again. I kind of started to lose interest in it a little bit more. But that second third, that sort of
Middle section.
that sort of 3.5 song run, I thought was really enjoyable. So it's an album I'll be revisiting again, and maybe with a bit more time, a few more listens, I'll love it a bit more. But I did like it. I enjoyed it, which is a bit more than some metalcore has recently. But there's a few songs in there at least to keep me interested enough.
I think I kind of felt the same. It's called The Cycles of Trying to Cope. And to me, I was going through cycles of trying to stay engaged, because some songs would be like, oh, this is sick as fuck. And then I'd kind of just float through the next two and be like, nothing is happening to me right now. And then another song would kick in. I'd be like, oh, this is sick as fuck again. So it was like, I don't know. I think there was a bit of fat to have been trimmed, personally, for me. But it was cool. Can't deny it was cool. It was very cool. But
I like the way you said cool there.
I
Cool
don't know,
Whip.
yeah, not Cool Whip. Sorry,
What's
James.
that from?
Family Guy.
I absolutely loved it. I mean, off the back of seeing them recently, I'd been listening to it a lot anyway. I can't recommend them enough as a live band, to be honest. I think there are 3 bands this year that if you took production aside from anything that people are doing on the stage, what are the 3 best live bands in terms of the sound, the charisma and everything that's coming across? I would say Landmarks, I would say Not Loose, and I would say Like Moss to Flames. Watching them for the first time, I was just constantly blown away by it. I think they were an amazing live band. To be honest, I think Kintsugi is one of the songs of the year. For me, it's a contender. It's an amazing tune. I think the first 2 of Angel Sweet Paradigm Trigger, had heard them before as they came out on like a dual release a couple of months ago. I really enjoyed them. And to be fair, it was actually the last 2 songs, in particular, The Depths I Roam and What Do We See When We Leave. I think just a really strong end to the album. The drumming in particular, like the double bass work, completely drew me in. And there's some really amazingly intricate things that are being done with it that I don't know if everyone will notice, but are very, very clever in how they match up with the riffs and kind of using spacing with things. It's amazing and extremely tight. So for me, I genuinely just absolutely fucking loved it. So I will recommend it to the end of the earth.
And I guess there's just one more thing to talk about.
And we're going to talk about Bring Me the Horizon Next Gen.
Right, we were expecting this quite a while ago, this release, weren't we?
It's taking its time.
It has, from what was still meant to be 4 EPs, and the countless delays when this was originally meant to be out in September.
We've had drama as well with Jordan Fish leaving the band for
It's all
unknown
happening.
reasons.
And, I mean, we finally had it released.
Surprise
And it's
release.
kind of, I think a lot of it with it is, does this live up to expectations of what people wanted? Because personally, I really, really enjoyed survival horror. That was something that really kind of actually drew me back into enjoying Bring Me the Horizon again after a while. And so I kind of was intrigued to see if this would carry that across for me. And spoiler alert, I don't think it did.
Okay.
I actually struggled quite a lot with it. I mean, looking at the album length, 55 minutes and 16 songs already was like, Jesus Christ, we've got nearly an hour of listening here, which is daunting. And I'm kind of immediately thinking, is this going to keep my attention? Quite a lot of the singles, I think, in the grand scheme of it, were the strongest songs. I felt like the amount of like interludes that they kind of used, in a way, felt repetitive to me and had such similar themes going across, and I didn't really enjoy it. I know you're pulling a face because you love a good interlude.
Love an interlude. Thematic.
And it just felt, I don't know, I just couldn't really connect with this. And I know because you'd spoken to me before, just kind of go into a little bit of what you think. You felt it quite cohesive. And I actually found it very much the opposite. I felt it at points it was just a little bit everywhere. And it didn't feel to me, personally, as an album.
I'm going to say a complete oxymoron now, but to me this album was cohesive in the sense that it was all over the place. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
like
it does.
It is by nature an erratic album, and I think it's very just very busy sounding. And I think there are some songs where that really works to its benefit. Some, like for example, Amen. It's quite a very densely populated song. There's a lot going on. There's 3 features. Like there's almost like no moment for like your ears to like rest in that song, and for that song it works. I think that's like by design. But then you've got some other songs on here where the same sort of songwriting style and effect is in use, and it becomes really like just distracting and like headache inducing to the point where it's like, oh fuck, this is just too much. So I don't know. I don't want to immediately be like, oh, look what they can't survive without Jordan Fish. But my immediate analysis is that he was to some degree you have to assume like a very good judge of when enough is enough. I feel like those
I'm with you on
reins have
that.
kind of been taken away. Is that's like, and I know we don't really know how the process works, really, but you can kind of infer that from what we already know about the band and how they worked on previous albums. Is to me, it seems like there's been a little bit too much of throwing everything at the wall. Just because it sticks doesn't mean it's all good. Do you know what I mean? That's my impression. My initial impression, at least.
I'm a relatively casual Bring Me the Horizon listener. I've not really loved anything they've done since Sempiternal. I think Survival Horror was great. I think they're, well, not great on the whole, but like there's particular songs on there that like really stand out as being some of the most enjoyable in Bring Me the Horizon's discography, I think. However, I think this album's really good, and I think it's some of their best work since Sempiternal. I agree with James's points that it's maybe a bit long, and I agree now that you've made that point about Jordan Fish sort of being there to rein it in. I do see that it's a bit sort of erratic and a bit like crazy and hyperactive, but I think that's a reflection of where the band, or at least where Ollie is at the moment. That's a reflection of his personality. That's like what he's like. I love songs like Utopia. I think that's a really, really strong start to the album. My favourite of the new ones is probably 10 Statues. Love that one. I think they do choruses really well on this album. But there's still sort of a bit of a heaviness to it, a lot of screaming. It's tricky with Ollie because like it's quite apparent that he's not as good of a heavy vocalist as he was in the past. But he still manages to kind of pull out somewhat of a performance. How much of it is sort of vocally edited, we don't know, but it's strong enough. I think it's passable. I think in terms of negatives, the main negative is that the singles on this album have been sat with us for a very long time. Die For You came out in 2021,
It's 3 years
which
ago.
was basically on the Survival Horror album cycle. So
They played it when we saw them in
Yeah.
Birmingham, didn't they?
Yeah. I would argue that Die For You, Lost and Strangers should have been left off of this album.
or could have just been an EP.
Or been just a little collection together. For a few reasons. Number one, I think they are... Die For You I quite like. Lost and Strangers I think are like two of their weakest songs.
I think the choruses in Strangers is brilliant,
I agree with you on that.
but I see what you mean.
It feels like an arena chorus.
Yep.
I did crunch some numbers, if you'll indulge me.
Go for it.
Because I have seen, and I've said it on a lot of our content in the past, that I have the attention span of a 7-year-old child. And when I saw the track list and the runtime for this, I was immediately like, ugh, get out of here. But if you remove all of the singles that we had, which were 6, I believe, which is ridiculous, that cuts the runtime down to 35 minutes, 30 seconds of new music. If you then take out the interludes as well, it cuts it down to 30 minutes. So
I think the interludes are fine. I think the interludes,
I also think the interludes are
I think the interludes serve their purpose on the album. But based on that, maybe the singles we had should have been an EP, and they should have just started this album cycle like after that.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we don't know the exact sort of ins and outs of the Jordan Fish situation, but like we can assume that he was involved with those singles. So maybe put them out, come to an agreement with him, put them out as a separate thing, and then have the album being a bit shorter.
Yeah. Because I believe that's what led to so much of the delays, wasn't it? Was the
it seems that
legal
way.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
of what's going on.
But then also the decision to just announce the album release like 10 or 12 hours before it's out, with no, and like streaming only. There's no and download. There's no physical release until September.
What's the point?
So again, going to be interesting from a chart perspective. See what happens there.
I felt like Survival Horror, although as well being a shorter length release, I feel like there's more differentiation in types of songs where you have a Dear Diary is very different from a Ludens, which is very different to a Kingslayer, which is very different to Butterflies with Amy Lee. I think there's so much more difference and variation in the type of music they're doing, which I think is actually where Bring Me the Horizon do best, because they are so capable of a span of things. I feel like the collection of this as an album is too narrow. I feel like there are too many songs that are more similar than different, giving us a wider span of what this band actually are amazingly capable of doing. And I think that kind of pigeonholing left it kind of a bit more stale and harder to go back and revisit, because it felt like too much of a similar kind of thing with it, and like a bit too chaotic with it.
Although one thing they have done differently on this album is the track Limousine. I think that's a really cool song.
I do agree. That
Although-
was they
although
released it as a single.
Although it's different in the sense of it's clearly got Deftones influence,
Mm-hmm.
and you could say to an extent Sleep Token influence. I mean, that breakdown sounds. I'm not like making any accusations
They're
here,
ripping off Sleep
but
Token.
it sounds. It reminds me of the Granite Breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's cool. It's one of my favourite songs on the album.
We did ask our Ragamuffin Club to let us know their thoughts. You can join that in the description below. It's free. Join our community. I'll read you a few of the thoughts that we've had.
Please do.
So Edward said, honestly, I've kind of moved on from it already. We had the bangers released. Limousine is good, but I've kind of turned my attention to other albums and tracks, which is surprising given my love for Bring Me. It could just be fatigue though. I've had Niall that said Limousine is a bop, which, like we said, I think, like I say, might have been on release day that came out as a single, potentially. I think that is
I always
more
find that
standout.
weird, though, by the way.
Pointless, I think.
Why release a single when it's out?
Yeah, no point.
Like,
The
single
album's there.
the purpose of a single, I think, should be to set an example of what's going to be on the album and like build excitement for it. Don't bother releasing something after it's already out.
No,
What's the point?
just push the album.
Yeah.
Kind of similarly to us in a way. Matthew said, it's a bit of a mess. It's all over the place. And I enjoy the hell out of it. So it's all going to come in different flavours to different people. And Jared said, only gave this a listen the other day. Quite enjoyed it, to be fair. I've never been a huge Bring Me fan, but I think I'm going to need to get on board at some point. And I think that's kind of the wonderful thing, in a way, to wrap it up about Bring Me the Horizon, is that their career has spanned over so many years. We've heard so many different sounds to them. Even from like friends that I know, everyone has their favourite releases, which are usually entirely different sounds.
Yeah.
And they're very much a band that if you had someone who had never heard of them to say, oh, what genre are they? You can't really define them. They're always pushing the boundaries with everything. They're still doing this. Never on any band's discography really is anything going to appeal to everyone. And I think it's always brave and bold to make the music you want to make and push the boundaries and create what you want to create. Fans aren't always going to like it, but you do it for yourself with that and can always commend them and respect them for doing that. What makes me interested to see is this is still in the Post-Human series. Originally meant to be 4 EPs. So maybe we're still kind of getting 4 albums. Let's kind of be reasonable with it at this point. We're going to obviously sit on this for a while.
Yeah,
I'd be intrigued to know the direction
said,
of what we're going to go
I'd
forward.
quite like for there to be a bit of a break now.
Yeah, I don't need anything from them in a while. But what does still tick over in my brain is that 4 release kind of thing. And thinking about, do they have an overarching theme they want to do with this? Is it just 4 complete different sounds? It's the stupid thing of being like, yeah, they just put an album out and I'm already thinking the next thing.
Well, I suppose survival horror's kind of like horror movie themed. Next Gen is video game themed.
So let us
Maybe
know down
there'll
below.
be some other book themed for the next one.
Hey,
Maybe.
who knows?
I
Book
think
talk.
I think like a trilogy is probably more likely
You think?
than, because if you're thinking from their perspective, it's become an album thing now. It's not really going to be. I don't think they're going to shrink down to EPs for the last 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the idea of trying to not force 2 more of these, but I just feel like as a fan as well, 1 more is like enough.
Trilogy's a nice way to
for it
complete
to
it.
feel like enough. Also, Kool-Aid is an all-time top 5 Bring Me song.
Oh yeah.
So
That bops.
if the album gave us nothing but that, then that's fine.
Gave you 1 song.
Give me 1 song. No, I like it. It's a good album. I think also as well, my own like personal experience of being a Bring Me fan is a lot of like immediate resistance to what's new, and then over time I like sit with it more, and I end up being sort of like 6 months behind a lot of other people. especially like that's how Ammo felt to me. I really was averse to it at the start, and now I really enjoy it. So maybe that's the path that I'm on for this album, is that the more I sit with it, and the more I'm able to sort of unpick the freneticness of the soundscape, I think it might maybe
I
start to
think it
appeal more.
almost doesn't help with the release being like, oh, okay, new album at midnight. It's 55 minutes long. It's a bit mad. And then you've suddenly got to like almost cancel what you were planning to just listen to it and like take it in. Whereas if you had like a specific date that the album was coming out, maybe it would have been easier to sort of
At least build that anticipation for
put
it.
some time aside to take it all
and
in.
like release the track list in advance so people can kind of again, just the psychology of like preparing for an hour of music when it's coming in 10 hours, whereas when it's coming in like 2 weeks is just
in fact, can we mention on NA, obviously the tour at the start of this year, I think originally was meant to be around the release of this album. Instead, they got the crowd to kind of chant a part of it. I have to say, if I was in the crowd and like getting excited about hearing my feature on the album, I would have been quite disappointed.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. That it just falls flat, and it feels genuinely, and whether it's recorded well or not, it feels like it was very much done in a studio. It doesn't feel like, I feel like part of that, if you're going to do that, you want that live
if you listen really
experience.
hard, it sounds like a crowd, but also they've put loads of effects and stuff over the top of it.
It doesn't feel like that crowd experience. I think if
agree.
you're going to do something like that, you kind of lean into that live aspect a little bit more somehow. It feels almost too clean.
But on the other hand, there's loads of people that are really excited about it and are
You're
really
on the
happy
Bring
to
Me
say they're on a
album.
Bring Me the Horizon album. So, fair play.
But anyway, let us know down below what you think of Next Gen. You're a Bring Me fan. Is this kind of new to you? Where you lie in terms of this album, and if it's appealed to you. If you've heard some of the songs live, let us know kind of what they're like as well. Like I say, you've heard from the Ragamuffin Club in here. Join that in the description down below.
We'll be discussing other albums in there.
Exactly.
And all the kind of new releases.
Plenty
you
of
can think
stuff. Plenty of stuff that we can't read in a YouTube comment section. It's not enough there. So join the club below. It's free. And then subscribe to the channel while you're at it. Right then, upcoming releases. It is a quieter month, but let me know what you're most excited for. We have got Stigma, the new album from Wage War. We've got Arc by Crossfaith. We've got I Want to Disappear from The Story So Far. The Bleeders EP from Black Veil Brides. Bon Jovi, Forever. And there's no fixed date on this yet, but apparently it's coming out. The sophomore album from Paris Hilton.
Oh, is it?
Brilliant.
Huge.
I mean, apart from that,
or is that a bit of a ways away?
I think that's July. Check.
Fact check.
Check.
By the way,
It didn't appear on my
It's
stuff.
Palpatine that does that quote. Yeah, it's in The Phantom Menace.
When he gets promoted to Supreme Chancellor.
Yeah.
Yep. I googled it as well earlier.
So aside from the obvious Paris Hilton release, what are you most excited for next month?
It's the story so far,
It is
isn't
the
it?
story so far, isn't it?
The comeback.
It's gonna be weird.
First album in 6 years, I think.
Come on, people, brace yourselves. It's not gonna sound like Under Soil and Dirt. Prepare for such a thing. Prepare for that, and you won't be disappointed. Otherwise, you will let yourself down.
I feel like they should have had more conversation with Casey about when these albums were released. I think they should have had I Want to Disappear, and then Casey released
There's
afterwards.
another band that's released
How to
something about
Disappear.
disappearing as well. I can't remember who it was.
But it should be the other way around. It should be
Hmm.
I Want to Disappear, and then Casey afterwards in response release How to Disappear. That's how it should be. I am most excited for the Wage War album.
Yeah,
Stigma.
the singles are really good.
I think in particular, a recent one, I'm loving the heaviness. They seem like they're stepping it up from Blueprints era, which makes me very, very excited. Yeah, intrigued. So that is your upcoming releases, and we can all unanimously look forward to Paris Hilton's next album.
Star of the
Yeehaw.
iconic 2000s horror film House of Wax. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's very good. Gig talk time, baby. What gigs have we been to?
We
this month?
love gigs.
Love them.
Where have you been, James?
I went to Electric Brixton to watch Landmarks, Devil Wears Prada, Like Monster Flames, and Guilt Trip.
God, it's such a good lineup, isn't it?
Fucking stacked.
I'm amazed you're still alive.
I don't know how. I don't know how, completely dead afterwards. Guilt Trip started off absolutely amazing. I think the amount of times I've seen them now, started trying to delve into the music more, just kind of amongst my general stuff that I listen to, and really actually enjoying it. And I think a lot of that is off how tight they seem to be live. And I think we'll talk about it a bit more in a bit. Seeing them at Slam Dunk as well, kind of like 2 weeks afterwards, having that kind of repetitiveness, kind of keeping it fresh in your memory, just made that even more memorable, I think, for me. Light Monster Flames, blown away first time seeing them. It's hard at the minute off the top of my head to think of many frontmen as charismatic and getting as much fun engagement from a crowd as I had from seeing Light Monster Flames. And then the tightness, the musicality live, the amount of times Glennie and I were just looking at each other, just like in awe, amazement, just kind of saying wow at what we were seeing on that stage. You were drawn to it, and for their entire set, I couldn't look away. I couldn't go anywhere. Prada was interesting. I think was a bit apprehensive about the discography going into it, being how big of a band they've been for
around
years.
for a long time, yeah.
And I never really listened to them, so I didn't really catch on to it. But I didn't find their sound too great compared to the other 3 bands on the bill. Sounded bloody amazing in there. But the sound for them didn't come across that well. The only thing that did was like the joy and happiness they were kind of having on stage, the fun. It was infectious. And everyone kind of caught on with that. So it made it a very different and interesting viewing experience. But Landmarks, shit, like one of the best, if not potentially the best live set I've ever seen. The sound was amazing. They sounded as they do on record, but even better. Everything was clean as fuck. The mix was incredible. Performances were amazing. Like hearing again for the second time now, the talent on display with the variety in Flo's vocals was absolutely insane. To go from amazing rap sections to beautiful cleans to absolutely low as fuck gutturals all in one evening, and showing that variety consistently is something there are not many vocalists that can do, and it blew me away. I fucking love this band enough as it is, and yeah, I can't wait to see them at Ali Pali in October on that Beartooth tour. They are the headliners for me, to be honest. I've seen Beartooth enough times. I've seen Polaris a couple of times, but my highlight of that night, and I'll tell you straight away now already, will be Landmarks at Alexandra Palace.
And the ramen noodles on your hat reminds me that you vlogged it. There's
Yes.
a vlog on the channel now.
Had some lovely ramen, as you'd be able to see. Glennie and I had a lovely day out in London for it, in good old Brixton. So yeah, go check that out.
Was that your first time at Electric Brixton?
No, Counterparts last year. Really,
okay.
really nice venue.
Okay.
I really like that venue.
Yeah, cool venue.
So would happily recommend it and go back to Electric Brixton again. And I think like a week after me, you went off to a gig, Dan.
I went to see Aaron West and the Roaring Twenties at Exchange in Bristol. My first time in that venue, for starters. Very nice little venue. It's got 2 rooms in there. There's one that's I think like 60 capacity, but the one that Aaron West was in is 250 capacity. So it's about the size of the Bullingdon in Oxford, to give you guys a perspective. The sound in there was excellent. Weirdly, there's a little record shop upstairs as well, which was closed. I thought they've missed a trick there of not keeping that open when there's a gig on. But hey ho, that's not why we're here. We're talking gigs. And the gig itself was brilliant. Dry Jacket supporting, doing an acoustic set. Spoilers, he's also a member of the Roaring Twenties. But yeah, thought he was really cool. Even I mentioned the sound being good. Even just an acoustic guitar and a vocalist, like it just sounded so crisp, and you could tell that like whoever's on the front of house was like mixing like the mic, what was going through the microphone between him, like talking between songs and then singing as well. So like there's
Locked in.
He was there. He was moving the dials. And then Future Teens supported as well. Personally, I thought they were much better live than they sound on record. And I'll say this over and over again. When a support band is having a good time on the stage, I'm having a good time on the floor. And boy, were they having a good time. They were cracking jokes between songs. talking about their time over in the UK, like American slang versus British slang. Really good live band. I'll definitely go and see them again. And then for the main event, and there's just something about the catharsis of sad songs with trumpets, because almost like the yin and yang of that, of like they're sad, mainly acoustic based songs, but then there's a trombone doing a melody in the background, and again just the catharsis of it, of just belting out these sad songs. As we mentioned earlier, Aaron West is like the saddest. That he's gone through some really traumatic experiences that he's singing about, but there's trumpets and everyone in that room singing about it all together, and like the sense of unity is just unparalleled. And I'll always love going to Aaron West shows for that very reason. And like, I mean, who knows? There's teasing and speculation that this project could be coming to an end, so maybe that was the last time. But if it was the last time, I loved it. It was brilliant and a great way to go out.
And he stays like in character. Is that correct?
He does, yes, to a degree. There's, I mean, it was so hot in there that I do think he said a couple of things on stage that he maybe slipped up on with the law. Like there's a couple of things. Well, I say a couple. There was one thing which I won't mention because it spoils one of the 2 albums that you'll be listening to next. But there's a bit that kind of didn't add up with the law, so I was a bit confused by that. But again, it was so hot in there. I think there were moments where Aaron/Dan was genuinely gonna pass out. Like he kept having to like get a towel on his head and everything. But yeah, he's in character for most of the time, like addressing the rest of the band as the Roaring Twenties, addressing himself as being Aaron West.
I like that.
It's very nice. It's a nice experience. I've never met him on merch while he's been doing it as well, but I'm told that when he's on merch at an Aaron West show, he's Aaron West on merch.
Interesting.
Which is a bit odd, because like I'd want to go and speak to him about the Wonder Years.
Yeah. And you kind of feel like you can't.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's sort of intentional though, that he could just.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Wonder Years are
inbuilt
obviously a much bigger band than Aaron West and the Roaring Twenties is. Like the Wonder Years would never be playing a room like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not never, but
When I say wanted to.
yeah. Exactly. And if they were to do that, the band would be like away from the crowd. Whereas I guess it's almost a way for him to interact with fans even more by putting this persona on. Yeah, it's a very, as you're discovering now, it's a very interesting world that he's built with this Aaron West project. And again, if that was the last time that I get to see it live, then so be it. It was a good one to end on. But I do hope that I do get to see them again and belt out sad songs with trumpets.
Nice.
And then it was festival season. We had our first one of the year. We returned to Slam Dunk Festival on South, as usual for us. A lot of thoughts, I think, going into it. Being ropey, maybe, potentially, because of last year. But I think trying to go into it with as much of an open mind. We'll kind of touch on it briefly here a little bit on some bits. But
yeah, I mean, we
won't
won't
have
say
a full review.
We won't say too much here because there'll be a full review on the channel.
Yeah.
But I guess let's maybe just mention a few bands that we thought were our highlights, and then talk about whether we thought it was an improvement on last year.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
I like it.
Sounds good.
Alex, few bands.
Few
What are your
bands. I always find with Slam Dunk every year, my favourite set is never like my favourite band or the one that I was personally maybe like the most excited for. It usually ends up being a kind of a surprise to me and just generally whatever's the most fun, regardless of how much of a fan I am. It was what happened to me last year with The Main. Like I was familiar with a few of their songs, not like extensively. I ended up having like a whale of a time just by like the pure power of charisma, basically. But the same sort of thing happened with All American Rejects this year. It was just so much fun, and it felt so good to be in a crowd that was like pure positive. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes when you're at like a heavy show, you're like, oh god, the lyrics are a bit heavy, or like people are moshing, and sometimes you're not really in the oh fuck, don't swing near me, that sort of thing. Whereas like sometimes it's just a nice sort of emotional reset to just be like, everyone here is having nothing but a good time. So, yeah, that was the standout for me. And also really happy to see One Step Closer, because I'm really enjoying their new album that's just come out.
Mm.
And it was cool to see and hear those songs live, like so soon after falling in love with the band. So that was really cool.
I think One Step Closer would probably my new band of the day. Like the rest of the bands I saw are bands that I've either already seen live before or already like well familiar with. Whereas One Step Closer, the album's not been out for too long, so I've not really had much of a chance to sit with it. And obviously it was our first opportunity to see them live as well, and I thought they were really cool. I like their blend of hardcore with like a mix of kind of that basement kind of level of shoegaze to an extent. And a really energetic, really cool set. I think although my favourite band were there in the Wonder Years, I've seen them so many times before that I think my actual favourite set of the day was the first one I saw, which was Beauty School. Another band that I've seen a fair few times recently, but I think every time I see them, they just step it up another level. And they were absolutely brilliant. An amazing way to start the day. They played both the new songs, including the one with Soupy. And I think that song in particular was my highlight of the day. Just, I think Joe, their vocalist, and I'm sure the rest other members of Beauty School as well are big The Wonder Years fans as well. So seeing them just enjoying themselves, having the best time with like Soupy accompanying them, filled me with joy as well. And I thought it was just brilliant. An excellent set and a perfect way to start the day.
For one of mine, I'm going to leap all the way back to around what you said at the start for All American Rejects, of seeing a crowd and hearing songs of like such kind of positivity and that radiating through. And that ties into my favourite one, which is The Ghost Inside. They have a kind of a brand of metalcore where there's so much positivity in the lyrics and kind of hope in something that can be so negative for a lot of it or speak on darker themes. There is so much more kind of light coming from what they talk about, especially with their experiences. And I think seeing them again now for the second time, like a phenomenal live band. And you can tell that I think even though it's been 9 years since the accident, that they still literally live for and take in every day they can that stage as if it could be their last. And there's something quite sweet about that. And one of my favourite highlights from it, I'll give you two. Engine 45, my favourite song. Fucking killed it, singing it out with my lungs. Thought I was going to lose my voice. But once everything was done, they hung around on the stage whilst they were waiting for Andrew to get off his drums. And everyone, while he was getting down, putting his leg back on, and they were helping him off the stage, the drum riser to come around to the front, just the applause from thousands of people watching that genuinely brought a bit of a tear to my eye, and you could see everyone getting emotional, that just waiting for it, watching him come round. Like, he's an amputee. He could have never played the drums again. And it was actually something really beautiful to watch. And to kind of be amongst that crowd of everyone cheering for it, felt like a wonderful piece of unity within alternative music. And everyone kind of having those same feelings from, you get all that perception stuff from the outside of people, like how they see it. But I think to be there in that moment and kind of live that, I think that's going to be something I'm actually going to remember for quite a long time. And then my second one was I Prevail, headlining the GoPro stage, second time seeing them, this time without Brian, just because of vocal surgery he's had. They were still fucking incredible. And I was incredibly surprised by Eric's cleans. Very, very good. Yeah, many great bands in there. I'll throw a quick shout out to Lucas from Holding Absence. We're feeling for a friend. He fucking killed it. He was amazing on that stage with them. And so, yeah, that's little bonus edition.
I want to give a quick shout, if I can, as well, to Arm's Length. Like, Alex and I both saw them supporting Hot Mulligan. Was it towards the end of last year? No, it was the middle of last year, like May time last year, around this time last year. And then I've seen them a couple of times since then as well, and like they were great on the Hot Mulligan tour, but the response from the crowd is noticeable. Like something's happening around that band, and I don't know what's caused it, but there's a lot of hype around that band, and I think quite rightly. They're ones to watch. Go check them out.
You mentioned about this, and I think we do it very quickly. I think we just go with a yes or no for the moment, because then you can hear our full thoughts and review. Dan, was there an improvement from last year?
A massive improvement.
Alex?
Yes.
100% across the board. And you will hear our full thoughts in
Yep.
the review.
Find out more in the full review. I just looked down the camera as if it was recording then. Find out more in our full review, which will be on camera, so you can see that we're not lying and we've not been held at gunpoint to tell you that it has improved, because it has improved.
Very much so.
We'll tell you how.
Today we're going to be predicting headliners for Slam Dunk Festival 2025.
Right. Is there any immediate thoughts to next year? I'm kind of thinking a lot, maybe Slam Dunk do anniversary sets very well. Are there bands that maybe we think are coming to a close, a bit like You Me at 6 this year, that we think could be in that realm almost?
I haven't thought about an anniversary, but I think the most obvious choice for a Slam Dunk headliner, and the one that is brought up every year, is A Day to Remember.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you look at the genres that a Slam Dunk sort of encapsulates, you're looking at pop punk, you're looking at metalcore. What happens when pop punk and metalcore loves each other very much?
What happens, Dan?
You get easy core. You get A Day to Remember. So I think it seems like an obvious one, but I'm going to throw them into the mix. And again, they're not necessarily a band that I would like to see headlining, but if we're going for a realistic prediction, I think they're one of the obvious choices.
It's like they're always just a viable option,
Yeah.
like permanently.
And rumour has it they were booked a couple of times and have pulled out. So
maybe next year.
maybe next year's the
Maybe
year.
next year.
Let me just check when their albums came out and see if they've got an anniversary next year. Talk amongst yourselves. All
I
day.
think the thing that Slam Dunk has to its advantage is multiple stages kind of gives way to multiple headliners on a technicality.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Neck Deep was sort of billed as a headliner a few years ago, and then it was sort of
last year it was Enter Shikari and the Offspring.
Yeah.
Like, different posters had them like on different sides.
It was sort of whispered. Neck Deep are headlining the Kerrang tent. So I think with that in mind, there's always like the de facto heavy stage at Slam Dunk. I think a real easy headliner for that is Bad Omens. Arguably,
Definitely.
maybe a smidge too big, but also kind
Have
of
they headlined
unproven
arena
in that
tours in the
spot.
UK?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but I feel like they are. I think they could pull as big a crowd as I Prevail.
bigger, I think.
I counter your heavy stage proposal with a different band, being Not Loose. I think, based on the surge in popularity, a proven headliner with 2000 Trees, proven headliner with Outbreak that we've had before, they draw a crowd more than they did 2 years ago at that point. And I think the popularity comes across into something more like Slam Dunk, where you have that versatility with these different headline spots. And I think they would draw. They would absolutely fucking draw.
And the production as well. I think it
100%.
also depends because, they move stages around year on year because Malevolence were the headliner of the heavy stage. Was it last year? Maybe?
I think they definitely played.
But it
last
was
year.
within a tent and it kind of felt
Yeah,
smaller.
so it was smaller.
I would love
Yeah.
to see Malevolence headline the stage that I Prevail were on this year, an outdoor open air one.
I don't think they're there just
I don't
yet.
think they're there yet, but maybe
Well, they
down the
might
line a
have an
little
album between now and then.
bit. True.
That could help tremendously. Did you have the Day to Remember thing?
There's no anniversary.
There's no anniversary. That's fine.
Common Courtesy came out in 2013.
Now, we did have a bit of discussion earlier on, Dan. And there's a band that I think could put on a very headline-worthy performance, especially after seeing them at Ali Pali earlier this year, and that's Neck Deep. Now, you did raise the great point that arena tours, selling big things like that. However, I've been thinking about it more, and I think, bear with me, a little bit similar to Downley Festival when they first put Not on there, and that was one of the things in 2009 that defined them as a festival headliner band. With Slam Dunk being a lower tier, the only way, if you're gonna book Neck Deep again, is to go up, and you wouldn't have them sub on that stage. I think if you're to book them off what is an incredible album, selling out Alexandra Palace, maybe you're taking a bit of a gamble, but it's also the 10-year anniversary of Life's Not Out to get you.
Yeah, I've thought about more as well, and I've realised that Don Broker headlined that stage 2 years ago, and they're an Ali Pali sized band.
I think
That
Neck
said,
Deep could kill it.
they're an Ali Pali sized band at the end of a full UK arena tour, but we haven't got the evidence to prove whether Neck Deep would be capable of that or not.
And it's a gamble.
But as you say, fueled by a Life's Not Out to Get You anniversary set, also like the nature of slam dunk attendees. Like there's a lot of bands that play that festival that will play to the biggest crowds they'll play to all year.
Mm-hmm.
Like I saw Arm's Length playing like a 200 cap room earlier this year, and then I've seen them play to probably about 1,500 people at Slam Dunk Festival this weekend. So yeah, if Neck Deep can play at Ali Pali in front of 10,000 people at their own show, then there's no reason why I guess a festival that's targeted towards their audience anyway, with you'd assume a strong undercard underneath them. There's no reason why they can't headline, to be fair.
It was a suggestion that popped into my head the other day, and I can't really wrap my head around whether or not I think they are big enough. So I'm kind of looking to you guys to say yay or nay. But 21 Pilots?
Plenty big enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I thought so.
Big
I was
enough,
I was
definitely.
doubting myself.
Yeah, I think
Personally,
so.
not my thing, but I think they'd put on a really good show.
I'll tell you
And I
what,
think
they're not
people-
my
it's
kind
the
of
right demographic, isn't it?
they're not my kind of thing either. But having seen them live at Reading and Leeds a few years ago, excellent live show, and a relatively recent album. The
Yeah.
album came out last week, I think.
So I bring it back to where I feel most comfortable with my wheelhouse at the GoPro stage from this year. A band that seen there a couple of times now, actually, interestingly. And actually the first time I ever saw them was at a Slam Dunk Festival in Hatfield Uni, I believe it was. Beartooth.
2015.
Yeah. They are fast becoming a band that are used to playing very big arena shows. They've got Ali Pali late this year. They've done Wembley Arena already before.
They played that stage 2 years ago, I
Yes.
think, as well.
I think,
Maybe second or third down.
yeah, I think Alexis on Fire headlined over
Okay.
them, I believe. I think the growth that Beartooth have had and the appeal that they have to a wide audience with their music, where there is such a range in what they're able to produce and play, I think for a heavier stage one, it kind of is almost hand in hand, very similar to I Prevail this past year, I think. And I think they would suit that very well. There is no doubt that the production level that Beartooth put on the show could be translated beautifully onto the heavier stage at Slam Dunk. I would probably have some wishful thinking and thinking that overall headliner, I don't think they're there yet, but I think they could be someone in the future as an overall headliner of Slam
I
Dunk.
think that's probably the reason why Slam Dunk goes for this kind of dual headliner thing, because I mean everyone knows that Slam Dunk stage is the main stage. Like that's the one that the headliner finishes on later than the
100%.
other stages. So I think in terms of that stage, it's never going to lean towards the heavier side of things. I think that's always going to be someone a bit more pop punky and a bit more commercial. But again, that's why deliberately there's like the obvious two main stages, because they can have a heavy offering over on that side for people that like that sort of thing, and like something a bit more pop punky or emo on the other stage.
My counterpoint would be the most recent Beartooth, I would say, is very accessible and commercial. And if they
Sure.
trend down that route, and I'm not saying this is even 2 years down the line, I'm thinking we could think 4 or 5 years, they headline that heavy stage, and at some point they're going to build and return to it. I think if they continue maybe on this trend of where they're going and being very commercially successful, they could reach that point.
Maybe, but when you're billing a stage underneath them, sub-headliners and the rest of the day, I think you've got to go heavier with Beartooth.
Yeah. I think the heaviest that main stage headliner slot will go is A Day to Remember.
Really?
I don't think it gets heavier than that, no.
I think there's opportunity.
Mm.
I think there's opportunity.
Because like Dan said, you have to think about the rest of the stage around, like the rest of the lineup on that stage around
I
it.
agree.
I don't think you can put, if you put Beartooth on the heavy stage, you could really easily put Polaris, Landmarks, Graphic Nature below them.
Yep.
But you can't do that on the main
You couldn't
stage.
do that on the main
You could
stage.
not do that on the main stage, no way.
But then, okay, I'll go to your point earlier about Bad Omens. If they draw a crowd as much as they seem to be with the amount of fan base, I don't think they should be finishing on the GoPro stage. They should be a band, if they're really drawing what they can, they should be closing the night. Because
it's a point you can argue, but then at that point they're too big for the festival. Then
because that's not what Slam Dunk's about. Slam Dunk is a pop punk
no heavier bands from basically pop punk or even at that point easycore essentially is going to have any possibility of ever headlining Slam Dunk Festival and finishing the night.
No, I don't think so.
Really?
I think
there's enough heavy festivals in the enough heavy festivals in the UK and Europe.
If you look at the headliners over the years, they're all. When I say the headliners, I mean the ones on that main stage that are ending the night. They're all of.
It's All Time Low.
Yeah.
Yumi at 6. All American Rejects have done it in the past.
Yeah.
Broco are kind of as heavy as it gets thus far.
Would you think that there would be any staleness?
It is a good point though.
Would you think there would be any staleness in regards to similar with Download, where there is a need for progression and a need for something new to come through? Because I'm not going to lie, let's say you have All American Rejects headline it again at some point, and you're going to have other bands that are going to come back and do it again and again.
No,
and
I
again.
don't think that's a problem with Slam Dunk.
No.
I think
they have enough wheelhouse?
I think they've got a much bigger pool of artists that they can pick through.
But I don't think. I think you got more luck. Bad Omens. You got more luck. Brand new One Day are popping up.
You know how we talk about the Dad
Bad Omens
Crash.
headlining.
No, we talk about the Dad Crash. That's the Grebo Crash.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think.
I say affectionately.
Before we come back around to like next year predictions, my interesting thought that has just popped into my head was, are Offspring this year a sub-headliner, aren't they? At Download.
To who? Oh, to Fall Out Boy.
No, on the Sunday
Are
to
they
Avenged.
Are they the second?
Are they
stage?
sub-headliner?
It's Limp Bizkit.
They're second stage.
Is it? Where are they on that? Was it third from top?
To the lineup.
I'm pretty sure they're main stage, Offspring.
They are sub-headliner to Fall Out Boy on the main stage.
Okay.
So the point that's kind of popped into my head is that you've got the Offspring who are sub-headliner to Fall Out Boy on Saturday. I don't feel... They, first of all, didn't even headline their own stage last year. And I think being in a sub-headline slot, they're a band that wouldn't even headline Slam Dunk.
The Offspring.
Yes, they did.
They headlined this, they were the alternative to Shikari last year.
Yeah.
They're a headliner. I swear it was Bowling for Soup.
Nope.
Okay, my point is null and void. That's fine. Next year.
There are, but before we start winding this down and locking in some guesses, there are still 3 stages that we haven't even talked about headliners for.
This is what I was going to say. Like, should we maybe talk about some bands that are like not necessarily main stage headliners that we'd like to see come back?
Dad Crash is difficult. If you don't know what we're talking about when we say the Dad Crash, that's like Pennywise, the Interrupters, Ska. Yeah, the Ska, skate
Real
punk,
Big Fish, Less Than Jake.
old school. Basically, you've dragged your dad along to Slam Dunk because you want to see water parks.
Also, by the way,
and your dad needs somewhere to go.
I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I think it's a brilliant marketing strategy.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant.
Because, Dad, I want to go to this festival to see water parks, to see Rory, to see all my favourite bands that I've seen on TikTok. So, I'll look at the lineup. Oh,
Pennywise are playing.
Pennywise are there. I like Pennywise. Yeah, you can go. I'll come with you.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And it's not our demographic at all, but I think off the top of my head, as far as maybe headliners, because I can't really gauge the size because we don't listen to that style of music, Rancid.
Well, Rancid was supposed to play
and I understand that there's an anniversary
year,
coming up.
I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it'd be good to see them return.
The Distillers, who have been in the size... They're sizable enough to be second stage headliners for Download. However, they had to pull out last year. So to me...
Was it them or was it the Interrupters?
It was them. Distillers.
Okay.
And then Descendants. Those are 3 bands that I would say could conceivably headline.
Descendants would be cool.
The Dad Crash. But beyond that, it's kind of out of all of our scope, really.
I don't know any of those 3. I've never listened to any of them.
Let us know in the comments if you think there's someone who's within that realm that's more towards the older generation that attends Slam Dunk and you think they could headline. Let us know who it could be.
Educate us.
Educate us, yeah. Descendants, Rancid, and Distillers, maybe. But let's switch gears to the Key Club, because this is a stage that we all adore.
Who headlined this year, sorry?
The Wonder Years.
The Wonder Years.
Okay.
I think it's basically set in stone that 4 Year Strong will be at Slam Dunk Festival next year. And I think Key Club stage headliner could be a good slot for them.
I think that's a brilliant slot for them.
New album.
Yep. Longer set time.
Yep.
Than being somewhere else.
They would have done a UK tour at the end of this year, so they won't be doing a UK tour, like a full UK tour, like any time between then and
they were doing a festival
year
run,
after.
Euro festival.
Maybe they'll do a European festival run. Maybe they'll be at Slam Dunk
I
Festival.
would like. This might be.
You could argue that they could be on like maybe the Slam Dunk stage, the main stage, sort of earlier in the day, but I think they're ready for a headline slot on a stage.
They could be like, let's say hypothetically, it's like neck deep headlining. You could put 4 Year Strong like third from top.
Yeah.
Maybe not the sub. Maybe someone else in the sub, but third from top would be a good.
On main stage.
4 Year Strong, yeah. Like the state champ slot.
Is they,
sure.
to go back to previous point, do they not have songs that are too heavy to go on that stage and therefore wouldn't fit?
No.
They're basically
No.
same sort of thing as A Day to Remember, aren't they?
Yeah.
But is that not too much on that stage with that?
Nah.
No.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. That is the limit.
That's like as heavy as it
That's
gets.
the limit
basically.
of that stage.
Yeah.
Is like that.
Easy
Easy
Call.
Remember, easy call.
But they wouldn't be a sub.
Nah.
Not.
So
not
would
to
it-
neck
would it
deep.
be-
No, I don't think so.
Would it be a bit disruption to the flow if they were third down and then we're going to go to something calmer before then neck deep? That to me would disrupt the flow.
Ah, No.
No?
Dan, I can't put into words, but he's wrong, isn't he?
Would that not disrupt the
I don't
flow?
know.
No, I don't think so. You could put like a Good Charlotte underneath neck deep.
Good Charlotte could headline.
Good Charlotte could also headline. That would be cool.
They have headlined in the past.
They have indeed. But you could conceivably, I think you could realistically go 4 Year Strong, Good Charlotte neck deep, or 4 Year Strong.
I
Story
think
So Far,
it
neck
really
deep.
depends what you've got on the other stages at the same time as well.
Yeah.
Because it's clear that each stage is curated, like for a particular style. It's why I spent my entire day at the Key Club.
I think
stage,
that's
for
by
example.
design. Is they almost want people like,
It's a great way to sell day tickets.
They
well,
want-
I mean, it is a one-day
Yeah.
festival, but you know what I mean.
but like it's almost like they want to make it as easy for you as possible.
Mm.
This is what
It's
you
almost
like.
here,
you only have
here
to
are
go
the
to
band,
one
here are the
stage.
bands that you
Yeah.
want to see. They're all in one place. They won't clash because they're all on the same stage.
But going back to the point we got away from slightly, yes, 4 Year Strong headlining Key Club would be really cool. Another band I'd like to see, they might be too small for it, but I can't gauge the size. This might be almost like a bit of a test for them, but Hot Mulligan.
They're a band that I think people are underestimate how popular and how
Yeah.
big they are. Like they've got something like 3.5 million monthly listeners on Spotify now, and they don't come to the UK that often. I mean, they're playing a pretty high up slot at 2000 Trees this year.
Yeah.
So again, with Slam Dunk being a bit more of a focused audience towards pop punk and emo, maybe a stage headliner.
Yeah.
Key Club stage in particular. Maybe, high up on a strong bill on the main stage.
Yeah.
I say high up. I've overestimated that. Maybe sort of where Mallory Knox played this year.
Yeah.
Like three.
Or they could like sub on the Kerrang stage if that's in a tent again.
Yeah. Again, it really depends how they bill the stages.
The Kerrang tent's the
But
one.
yeah,
that
I'd love to see Hot Mulligan at Slam Dunk.
Yeah. The Kerrang tent's the one that I find the hardest to book. Because who was it this year? Water Parks. And I avoid that band like the plague, so I've got no perception of how big they are.
Yeah, they're fairly
So
big band, yeah.
It's like
I
then
mean,
hard
for
for me to
example,
it's hard for me to like equate
They
them
had
to them.
they were above bands like Pale Waves and Bob Dylan, and like Pale Waves are like Radio 1 rock, so they're a popular band.
So who would you put on the Kerrang stage to headline?
It's tough. Like looking at the Kerrang stage this year, it feels like almost like
There's a bit all over.
again, like I said, like the Radio 1 stage
Mm.
of almost like these are some like relatively new, relevant bands.
Sort of mainstream adjacent.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
feel like I'm playing Spot right now.
Yeah, I'm at a real loss for like trying to think of a band.
I think in
Could fill that
conclusion,
slot.
it could be anyone on that stage.
Yeah, I feel like that's a real good sort of testing ground stage for like, not in a harsh way, but it's sort of a sink or swim
Ooh.
spot to headline that.
What about Boston Manor?
Yeah,
A lot of people are like touting them as like a 5-year plan, as like a headline for the whole festival on the trajectory they're on.
I would rather.
But I think we could see them headline the stage next
I
year.
would rather see how the album goes, maybe give it a year and push them more towards a Key Club.
They've already headlined Key Club.
Yeah, they're bigger than Key Club.
They've headlined Key Club before. Don Brokers, yeah.
Then I'd rather see them in a sub spot on main stage or something higher up like that, to be honest. I think they deserve that more with the career they've had. I wouldn't put them in a tent. I'd give them more exposure in front of the main crowd.
It depends what you want.
Again,
though,
it depends.
They could pack a tent.
It depends how they build the stages, like I said. But like, what I'm thinking, like in terms of that Kerrang tent not really having as much of a set identity as the other stages do, something like Boston Manor that's a little bit multi-genre could be a big one on there.
Much to think about.
Yeah.
Well,
who else would like to see come back? The Story So Far have a new album out this year.
Mm-hmm.
Would they go back to Slam Dunk, do you think?
I think they could. They
Well, there was the Kerrang stage 2 years ago, had Neck Deep headlining, The Story So Far sub-headlining. Could we move that to the main stage?
Yeah. I think so.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. There you go, Sam. We booked it for you. Any final thoughts before we try and lock in some predictions, I guess?
Now, not in a tent and actually having the heavy stage on a main actual, I guess, stage, not like kind of packed in. After their production at Ali Pali, I'd like to see While She Sleeps close out the night, the heavy stage. I think with what they can actually produce and what they do, I think it'll be a lovely return to have them. And it's proven that they can draw a crowd.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in that. I would personally love to actually see them as an overall headliner in some way, shape or form at 2000 Trees. I think that'd be very, very cool. And I think they fit that vibe as well. But then I also think they would do an amazing set here. And I think that would be absolutely phenomenal.
I've just thought of something else we could talk about. Slam Dunk the last couple of years has become the place to be for reunion shows. Who's reuniting for Slam Dunk Festival next year?
Oh, wow. That's a question.
And let's all say Modern Baseball to manifest it.
Modern Baseball would be nice, wouldn't it?
Would you have your Lower Than Atlantis reunion?
Oh, hell yeah.
That could headline, couldn't it?
Don't feel like that could headline.
Wouldn't go that far.
Sub?
Yeah, at least sub.
A Lower Than Atlantis reunion is
maybe
equivalent.
a Kerrang stage headliner.
Yeah.
Thing is, I think firstly, pretty sure it's not going to happen. Secondly, if it does happen, it's going to be like a one-off thing. It's going to last a couple of months. They'll do like one festival, one tour, and then they'll be gone again. So there would be demand for it.
Oh,
but
fuck.
I don't think it's headliner.
Kerrang stage headliner, Let Live.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be a good one.
So we asked this question in our Ragamuffin Club, which you can join via the description below. Free community. We love talking about music, so come join with us.
Fun and free.
We have discussions in there all the time.
Exactly. And you get bonus extra content, so come and join.
There's
so we
probably some outtakes from this very video you're watching that will be in there.
100%. So, opinions from them. Edward said that he would like bands such as Holding Absence, Sleeping with Sirens, Jimmy Eat World, Simple Plan, Amity Affliction, Motionless in White, Spirit Box, Poppy. And then one of his friends said to him, Rise Against could be a good one on there.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Exactly. Get all your Christmas presents in one. And there's a lot of bands on there that I'd love to see.
Sleeping with Sirens are doing an anniversary tour, like around now.
I think
so. That could be one that
that's just triggered a really easy booking in my head. Sleeping with Sirens to sub main stage, Pierce the Veil to headline.
Yeah,
it could happen.
Yeah,
they have just done arena tour.
I'm thinking if Pierce the Veil are anywhere on that lineup, they're headlining. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, they've done arena tour recently.
They're too big to headline any of the other stages. Yeah. I can't see who they'd be a sub for.
That would maybe be like the heaviest.
Them with a strong undercard would be good. Yeah, that works.
Jareth has mentioned Neck Deep being a must, as well as another great mention of Holding Absence, and a band that played last year that needs to come back, Girlfriends.
I'm not too familiar with Girlfriends,
but might have to be something we check out.
Holding Absence is an interesting one because obviously they're playing Download Festival this year, which there will likely be some kind of exclusivity thing. Whereas next year they'll be free to play
as many
other UK festivals.
Exactly.
So maybe they will be back at Slam Dunk.
Jamie has said, thinks A Day to Remember, wants Magnolia Park, the home team, Tiger's Jaw, Modern Baseball.
This guy knows what's up. Tiger's Jaw's brilliant.
That's a good shout. actually.
Tiger's Jaw's
Yeah.
brilliant shout.
Jay has said Arm's Length playing a set on every stage.
Yep, definitely. I think, like as I said, by the response from the crowd this year, I think there's a lot of people that
It
would be
was
on
like
board with that.
a bit of an anomaly, wasn't it, for a band that early on in the day to have such a reaction.
Like I said, something's happening with him.
Jareth added some more. He's got Home Team, Normandy, Stand Atlantic, Hot Milk.
Yeah, all good.
And then finally Ross.
Hot Milk are an interesting one in terms of where do you build them?
Yeah, they're like
because
deceptively big, aren't
They're
they?
big, but like they don't seem to be playing massive slots at festivals. I mean, Download Festival main stage, sort of early on in the day, they've been supporting Foo Fighters all around the world, but
Difficult.
they're not quite slam dunk headliner ready. I don't think. I mean, they're playing like they're not headlining at 2000 Trees this year.
They could headline the Krang tent.
I think so.
Easy. Interesting.
Maybe that's where we put them.
And
But like we're booking it.
Yep.
And finally, Ross said Don Broco, Turnstile, The Story So Far, Boston Manor, Holding Absence, The Neck Deep, something resembling this would be awesome.
Turnstile's a good shout. I think they're more at home at Outbreak.
They would be at a GoPro stage.
I think it depends how you bill it again, because Turnstile, like on the face of it, aren't heavy. They're not like metalcore heavy, which that stage traditionally is. But they're also a bit too heavy for the main stage, I think, and a bit too big for any of the other stages. Unless you book a little hardcore stage around it all.
Could be the way.
It's piquing your interest.
That's definitely
is the
piquing
way.
interest. This is the way. Well, I guess we'll maybe try and lock in a prediction for next year each. James, would you like to go first?
I'm going to will into existence a live note out to get you 10-year anniversary set from Neck Deep.
Plus the hits.
Plus the hits, yeah. How many bands do you want from me?
Maybe give me like two options, because that's kind of how Slam Dunk vibes it, don't they? They sort of
Like, do I go heavy stage or
Slam
do you
Dunk,
want...
whatever you want, mate.
Okay, so there's that Neck Deep one there, and then heavy stage. Are you going with what I think or what I want? This is the hard part.
It's a prediction, so.
What I think.
However, we could do a video. This would be quite an undertaking. Let us know if you want to see us do a video where we try and book the entire lineup
Jesus Christ.
each.
Yeah, and we could like score it based on how many we actually get right,
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
and how. Yeah, we'll discuss this.
We'll plan this out. That's a
we'll
good
cook
idea.
this up. Yeah, I've got a plan.
I'm going to go with Beartooth. I think they've got the widespread appeal that you kind of have that metalcore. It can end a metalcore kind of day on that stage, but then it's still got that availability for a much wider audience that I think would appeal, almost similar to an I Prevail kind of level. Neck Deep, Beartooth. And that just makes me ridiculously fucking happy.
Yeah, but then one of them, Beartooth's going to overlap with the start of Neck Deep.
I will look at and study many set lists beforehand of what both bands have been playing to judge when I'm going to maybe leave Beartooth.
If it's going to be a live set out to get your anniversary set, then presumably they're starting with Citizens of Earth.
I may have a lot of running back and forth. If Slam Dunk, if you're watching, if you
Get the
could kind
cardio
of
Get James a buggy. Let James rent a buggy for a day.
Yeah, I want like a golf cart or something where it's just my personal use. Can have the Ragamuffin logo on it as well. That'd be beautiful. And I can just shuttle myself back and forth. Or actually, to be fair, if you could hire a driver as well to shuttle me back and
gracious
forth.
I've got this image in my head of, all right, mate, we got your buggy request. The best we could do was this Fisher Price car.
I'm just there fucking pedaling. Okay, Ali.
Neck Deep just is like such a.
It's very, very appealing, isn't it?
It's a very appealing, but it's a very like kind of safe prediction, I think.
I would say so is a day to remember.
I would also say that. I think I'm going to trust a random instinct. I think the headliner will be 21 Pilots, and I think the alternate stage headliner will be something heavy. And I think that heavy band will be While She Sleeps. So that there's a UK band represented at a UK festival.
I think Main stage. I know it's obvious, but I think a day to remember. I think they'll have a new album out by then. And I think it's been a long time coming for them to headline. And I've just thought of one for the other stage. Frank Carr and the Rattlesnakes. You've heard it here first. And join us in the Ragamuffin Club for even more detailed debate.
The last thing to do is to recommend an album before we can all go home. James, a recommendation, please?
I'm
sir?
not actually recommending an album. I'm recommending an EP.
What?
Ooh.
After
Is that
the
allowed?
inspiration
Is he allowed to
of-
do that?
I'm allowed to do that.
Crazy.
After seeing them recently, the new album that's come out, I'm gonna thoroughly throw you back into metalcore again.
If it's just an EP, it's fine.
It's Pure Like Porcelain by like Monster Flames. There's a few tracks on here in particular. I won't spoil any, but there's a few in particular that I fucking love and I think are amazing pieces of metalcore and pushing the boundaries, I think, of what you can describe as metalcore in certain sections of things. So that is mine there.
You know what's coming from me? It's album 2 from Aaron West and the Roaring Twenties, Routine Maintenance. But I'm also going to chuck in, before you listen to that album, there's a couple of songs on an EP called Bittersweet, which not only adds to a sort of a bit of background story and lore to the Aaron West world, but there's also a couple of my favourite Aaron West songs on that EP as well. So I couldn't have you missing that one.
Cheekily sneaking in two recommendations.
And Alex, it doesn't spoil anything. Alex mentioned earlier that he'd like to meet some new characters. Can confirm there's some new characters on this album.
Yippee! Oh god, I'm really struggling.
Do you never think of this before?
I never prepare. I always try and just let the recommendation just come to me.
And what's the recommendations coming to you?
The recommendation coming to me is One Step Closer's new album, All You Embrace.
Nice.
Because it just came out. We didn't really get any time to even put it in our reviews this month because it's been so chock-a-block busy. And I think, Dan, especially, it's up your street. Just need a bit more time with it. And I want a bit more time with it. So it's a bit of a selfish one. But
Just I wanted to mention something that disappointed me about their Slam Dunk set. Is he kept asking people to take a couple of steps closer.
I heard a lot of people saying that in the crowd around me because I was at a different part to you, and everyone was like, "It's right fucking there.
Yeah.
Just say, take one step closer."
He's obviously deliberately not doing it, but he kept being
you
like,
should. It's
"Move forward,
it's
everyone, move
marketing.
forward.
It's marketing genius.
Take a few steps closer."
Marketing genius to actually say it. But yeah, there's our recommendations for the month.
there we go. The end of another happy episode.
Another happy episode.
Another happy episode. Let us know in the comments.
Once we've got Aaron West out of the way, I'm going to recommend the Star Wars soundtrack.
How many of them
The
have you
score.
seen?
So, disclaimer: 4 to 6 we had his videos as kids, which loved and watched. 1 to 3 grew up at that time and saw them in cinema. I still remember you and me sat in our old house watching 7. I fell asleep quite early on. Spoiler alert, I woke up as Han Solo died. Looked to you and be like, "Oh, that just happened," and then went back to sleep. I've not seen a single film since that 7th one.
Spoilers.
I don't blame you, to be fair. Thoughts on the new trilogy? Sequel trilogy?
Fine.
Fair enough.
Excited for another trilogy they're apparently making?
No.
No.
Let it die.
Let it die. Or explore, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of years of lore that you've built up that could be far more interesting. But anyway, it's
We
not a Star
digress.
Wars podcast, it's a music podcast. Let us know your thoughts on all the new music we've talked about today in the
You're
comments.
going to go, let us know your thoughts on the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, well, no.
And why Jar Jar
Do
Binks is the
actually.
best character in the Star Wars franchise?
Jar Jar Binks Defender. To the death. I lost my train of thought thinking about Star Wars now.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Ragamuffin Club. It's fun, friendly, and fucking fun. There we go. There's the tagline.
We're gonna be at a bunch of festivals. If you see us there, come and say hello. It was really nice to meet a bunch of people at Slam Dunk Festival, and we hope to see more of you throughout the summer.
That vlog will be out or about to come out by the time you hear this. Depends who edits quicker between me and Dan. And then download.
It's happening.
It's happening. Not for me. I'm not going.
Sadness. Gonna
That's
miss you.
tragic.
Gonna miss you.
It won't be the same.
No.
Sorry, guys.
On a happier note,
It'll
subscribe.
be better.
What the fuck?
Subscribe, hit that buttons, like, comment, all that stuff, and we love you. Thank you.